Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Car Dealership Guy Industry Spotlight. I'm your host, Sam Dark. Coming up today, learn how one dealer group is surviving without a used vehicle aging rule. In fact, they're thriving by placing aging vehicles in stores with the best shot at optimal grosses. And most interesting of all, that decision about where to put the vehicles is based on analytics, not on gut. Joining me today is Trent Waybright, Vice President, Used Vehicle Operations for Kelley Automotive Group, and vAuto AVP of Inventory Solutions, Patrick James. Props to vAuto for supporting today's show. Let's get into it. Hey, so Trent, for our audience, give a little bit of background on Kelley Auto Group and who you are and what you do inside of Kelley.
I work for Kelley Automotive Group in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I started selling cars for Tom Kelley in May of 1999.
Wow, long time.
Therefore, I've been with the company for a long time.
Yeah. And how long have you been in this director role?
I've been VP of Used Car Operations for the past 12 years or so.
Wow. So a long time. You've seen a lot of change, not only during the course of your career, but also just in your period of time you've been there long enough as VP of Used Vehicle Operations to have seen a lot of change.
And a ton of change.
And at one dealership. How would you describe the change over the past decade in used cars?
Oh, man, I'd say it's been a roller coaster from my perspective. It's an ever-changing, environment. We've had to figure out how to adapt. I've been with our company in the lows and in the highs, and, you've got to just take it day by day and figure it out as you go. You got to work your butt off. That's all you can do.
You're in an interesting position because you've been with one group your entire career, which is not unusual. It shows loyalty. It shows they're a great place to be. How do you figure out how to be the best used car VP in the country, right? Like having grown up inside one auto group, where do you get your best practices from?
So many different ways, I think, but it is getting to know people throughout the country.
Yeah.
I'm privileged to be in a vAuto NCM 20 group, which we started, I believe, in 2014. So roughly 11 years. I've been in that group. We meet 3 times a year. And I have met
vAuto NCM group. What does that mean?
Well, it's a used car group. So we have a wide range of people in our groups. We don't have just the owners or just the GMs or, just used car managers. We get kind of a wide range, but the primary focus of our group meetings is used cars. And so we're constantly, when we go to these things, trying to figure out how we can improve, looking at all the changes in the environment. And I come back every single time, 11 years later, with at least a page full of notes and things that I want to get done before I go back.
All right. So the old joke is, for anybody that goes to a 20 group, you come back, you want to make changes, you spend some time implementing it. You spend time until everybody gets frustrated and says, that's crazy, it's not going to happen. Like, what are some of the specific key takeaways that you were able to implement that have helped generate more revenue for the Kelley Auto Group?
Well, I think one of the first major takeaways, and I'm talking about maybe 8 years ago, was our PBA to Decatur program, public before auction. And so back then,
what does that mean?
The biggest priorities was to figure out how to sell these little cheap cars that we have, that we all take in on trade, that we're afraid to sell. Should we just take them to the auction? And so, you focus on your ratio of used to wholesale. We're under 20%, at any given time. But it's because we take these cars that have 100,000 miles or more, most of the time, and we send them from our Fort Wayne campus to our Decatur location, which we have 3 dealerships on the same property. The average medium income is a little bit lighter down there. And it is a prime opportunity for those cheaper cars.
And how did you see that as an opportunity? How did that become evident? Hey, it's a better idea to dispose of those vehicles outside of, our main footprint in Fort Wayne. You're sending it out of town.
Yeah. Again, it was, that idea for us came from Maury's.
Okay.
They were in my
Props
20.
To Maury's.
Yep. Yeah. Way back in the day, they were in my 20 group, and we had a couple dudes in there that had tried it. And I was thoroughly intrigued, looking at our wholesale ratio. Back then, we were probably, 50, 1 to 1 or 1 to 0.5. And I thought, man, we could do better. We could figure this out. We always seemed to be short of the cars that we really needed at our Decatur campus. They retailed, a low costed average, low costed unit on in most cases, and we struggled to get those cars down there. So it just all made sense to provide those cars to them.
So you came back from this 20 group meeting. You're the VP of used vehicle operations. You're like, I got a great idea. We're going to take all of our used cars over 100,000 miles or X dollars. We're going to move them to Decatur. What was the biggest obstacle you got 8-10 years ago to that change, and how did you overcome it?
Truthfully, it wasn't that difficult. The structure of our company probably provides that a bit of easier, situation in that regard. But we have an executive team. We have a couple of VPs in the company. We all meet and talk about these things. Our company is, fairly big, but it's not that big. And so it's just a lot of meeting with the stores, meeting with the managers, making them understand, or, trying to get them to understand the decision is for the company. Look at
you were able to get buy-in that way.
Yep. Try to get the buy-in that way.
So moving ahead a decade later, you've had success with this one strategy. Tell us today, Trent, what's on your mind as a VP of used vehicle operations? What worries you most, or what's the biggest obstacle or problem you're working on today?
I think one of the biggest challenges of the last couple of years is our cost to market. What you're having to pay for these used cars, which I think everybody can probably agree with. Shrinking margins. We're trying to take it day by day and find other methods, find other avenues of creating growth in our deals. So
what's your best source for used vehicle acquisition? We ask that a lot on the Daily Dealer Live. Where do you get your best used cars today?
Sell to Kelley Acquisitions. We do have our own website, so our customers can go there and start the process. We acquire 40 to 50 units a month from customers that are fairly local. And so that's a big source for us. We do still buy from the auctions, some. We try not to, but we do. And we have really, really, really worked hard in the last year at that trade win percentage.
And what's the trade win percentage?
Well, they say that the goal for the used car side is 40%. For the new car side, 60%. So we're in a unique advantage that we have franchises, right? So we sell a lot of new cars. If we can capture 60% of the cars that we sell that have a trade-in and 40% on the used car side, we're doing a really, really strong job. Collectively, we're exceeding those targets. Therefore, we're generating all the time more trade-ins than most.
Yeah. We had Brian Kramer on the show recently, and he talked about a ratio. He said, hey, if you sell 500 used cars in a month, you should figure out how to quote or put bids on 3 times that number of vehicles. So you should bid 1,500 vehicles. So service lane, used cars. What do you think of that ratio? And are you guys doing anything interesting in the service drive to help get there?
I think it's a good target. I'd say historically have struggled a bit in the service drives. We've never had a ton of success at it.
It's a challenge because, to have it work, you got to do it 100% of the time. You almost have to have separate staff, and you really got to be all in. So
yes,
it's interesting, Trent, as a used car VP for a large group like Kelley. How many stores do you have again?
We have 9 rooftops, 14
so you've got 9 rooftops. You've probably got an aging policy. What's your policy as it relates to aged used?
We really don't.
Okay.
So I've been in my position, I've mentioned 12 years, but I've been involved in the used car operations. I was the first person to log into vAuto back in 2007 in my company. Yeah. And so my train of thought has always been, if you take good care of the inventory from day one, you merchandise it, you price it, aggressively or where it needs to be in the market, and you do that consistently, that the aging will take care of itself and you won't have a big problem. And so, so at the moment, we've got roughly 30 cars over 60 days old in the group, out of about 400 retail. So a very small percentage. And again, it's just managing on a daily basis.
Yeah. Very cool. So great partners help make automotive even better. And so without an age policy, You found an interesting solution to an age-old problem of where's the best place to get a used piece of inventory? Is it the auction? Is it a customer? Is it from another store? You're able to answer that in a unique way. Tell us about that and how you arrived at a solution to trade inventory store to store in your large group.
I mentioned earlier, I really struggled historically with buying into transferring inventory among our dealerships. I just always felt like if we took care of the cars at the stores and we did the merchandising, price, and everything effectively, that we wouldn't have a problem. Those guys took the cars in most cases, so they should have the chance to retail them for a bit, let's say, before we worry about doing something else. And so, obviously, times have changed a little bit here in the last couple of years. And
yes,
so, as the cost of market has risen, as it has become more and more difficult to buy cars at auctions or anywhere, it just seemed to start making sense to look at our own inventory, and maybe use a bit of engineering and a bit of data to help us determine where could this car be best in our group, rather than us having to go buy a car. And so vAuto approached me. I feel like it was late last year. They had an idea concept about transfers, and what they were seeing in their tool. And so I thought it was very intriguing, from my perspective, a couple different ways for the inventory management side, but also, the pure accounting, the efficiency of the transfers, just provided a whole different way to look at it. And so,
but what's your motivation to transfer if you have no aged inventory policy? There's no reason to transfer it. Like if I'm a GM and I have P&L responsibility for a store and nobody cares if something gets old, like what's my motivation to get rid of it? I want to retail out of it, right? That's why most groups have an age policy. Why? What's a GM's motivation to move that inventory to another store, Trent?
Here's my perspective. It's not really up to him. Okay. I'm in a very unique role in my company. And so I'm kind of bizarre over the used car.
So you tell them, and then that's the way it goes, right?
That's exactly right.
Okay. So enter Patrick Janes with vAuto, right? Patrick brought you some reports that made the argument that, hey, there's no age policy, but you're going to actually make more money if you transfer that vehicle elsewhere. Patrick, maybe share with us a little bit the insights you brought to Trent that helped force fun in this case.
Yeah, Sam. I love the authoritarian quality of Trent Waybright. Yeah. That is truly centralized inventory management, though. Like he owns he has the checkbook. The owner gave him the checkbook, and by gosh, this is how we're going to do it. Which is not a bad thing sometimes, right? When you're looking out for the owner.
It doesn't happen everywhere, though. It doesn't.
Yeah, I get it. So there's some. And honestly, I think vAuto, we've tried to cater to both of those approaches, right? One that is totally centralized, like Trent. Trent makes that call and he optimizes the inventory everywhere. But we also understand that there are GMs that, aren't going to give the car up. So we put a process in place or in the technology where we've got kind of a transfer list. So hey, you've got cars on the transfer list. They're going to transfer at the end of the month. So there is that sense of urgency. Like I know someone has made a decision to move these cars and I've got a window of opportunity to get rid of those. But I also see a transfer list of cars that are coming in from another store. And so therefore I see what I'm going to get, assuming, the month ends and those don't get retailed at the other store. So we try to build in some of those things to provide some flexibility depending on the centralization efforts of the group. But I think, Sam, there's a couple stats I'll share with you. One is about a year ago, we started looking inside the vAuto tool. We saw on a monthly basis, and I know we weren't capturing it all, but we saw about 9,000 units being transferred intergroup, store to store, right? That was in vAuto. We also found, based on tracking stock numbers, that there are about 9,000 units a month that were retransferring outside of vAuto. Like we could see that those cars were moving, but we weren't using our tool to transfer the inventory. So they were probably going through the DMS and then showing back up again. That's a lot of cars. And we said, so this activity is popular amongst our client base. And we figured that there's a need for us to be able to support that. And then we thought, we got a lot of insights, right? We should be applying our insights in a platform where they can make better decisions about moving those cars. And the other stats I'll share with you, which these ones, this is not Trent's store because Trent's way ahead of the curve on this, but we found that on average across groups, the average age of a car being transferred was about 45 days old. And when it got wholesaled, it was 90 days old. So we gave it 2 shots, right? We sent it to 2 stores. We did it basically after it aged rather than looking at the quality of the car being, moved to a store that could use it right away. And the average wholesale loss was about $800 on those cars. So again, we sat on them for a 90-day cycle, tried 2 stores, then wholesaled them and lost $800. And, there are a lot of groups out there that are making money on wholesale because they're making that decision earlier in the life cycle of the vehicle. So this gave us the challenge of saying, how do we help dealers optimize this inventory, perhaps transfer the vehicle a little bit sooner in the life cycle? It's a depreciating asset. And then 2, make it more seamless just from a accounting perspective and being able to get the car from one inventory to another without a whole lot of brain damage.
So you've got this tool. Let's go back to the aging policy that we talked with Trent. So at Trent's group, he's got the authority. He can force it. Patrick, what do you see as a best practice from vAuto's standpoint, right? Aging policies across auto groups are what are forcing the inter-store transfers, right? And then ultimately the wholesale loss. Is an age policy and used in our crazy used car marketplace today still a good idea?
60 days is the number, right, that we used to always hear. And I was a vAuto performance manager before I got into my current role. So I worked closely with dealers, like Trent inside the app. And, most of them had an agent policy of 60 days, and then we sent it for wholesale. I believe the way Trent's approaching things, if you're truly, optimizing the insights of where the best chance, the highest probability of sale of that car is early in its life cycle, we can, perhaps Trent can get away with, and he does because he does a really good job without an aging policy, right? Because he still sees life and opportunity left with that car before we're, sitting there with a 60+ day unit going, oh, let's just try it at another store and see what happens, right? I think he's thinking through that much earlier in the life cycle, and the cars are gone at that point. Now, we've kind of pivoted a little bit on our philosophy around, the idea of velocity, which every car, has got to go, at a certain date.
Yeah.
We have found, again, through insights, that there are cars that you can sit on longer, and they actually, will depreciate slower, and they will make you the money. So we have tried to build those insights into the tool so that, we don't necessarily have this hard turn policy on every car, regardless of the ROI opportunity of the vehicle. So I think those new insights are changing the way things are starting to change that age policy a little bit.
It's a fascinating argument because really good used car managers right now would say, hey, inventory goes up. In some cases, it comes down. It's tough to get. Like, recon's expensive. If I get a used car from a customer, let me hang on to it longer. Let me hang on to it through the seasonality. So this reporting tool that gives you these stats, what's it called? It's in the vAuto solution, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're just kind of throwing a name out there, centralized inventory management. It is a platform that we layered on top of the groups at the enterprise view. There's no extra charge to it. This is just an enhancement that we came out and said we can do a better job helping our dealers, one, with the transfer piece, but 2, just better reporting. So, you're talking about dealer 20 groups earlier, and you don't always have to go to a really great destination, although I'll bet, Trent, you've had a couple of good ones. There's probably a few favorite places you've gone to. But, we don't have to do that, to get some insights on how store by store is accomplishing the goal. And I think we're bringing better insights into the tool to let a C-suite, let's call it, centralized operator, be able to see things across each store and compare better.
Okay. Okay, so Trent, break this down for us then. All right. So how many used cars approximately, give or take, do you have in inventory currently?
In retail inventory, we've got roughly 400 used cars.
Okay, so you have 400 used cars, and you said you've got 10 rooftops, right?
9 rooftops.
9 rooftops, and you've got no turn policy, which could be dangerous unless you've got a good resource to help you figure out how to turn it. So as you look at those 400 used cars, how do you engage with the reporting to figure out a car that needs to move? How do you set it up to make it ready to move? How does it proactively move? And then what's the result? Does it end up with a better profit margin, flat? Do you end up with a loss? But first, let's start with how you set it up.
It's a huge question.
It's a long question. You break it down however you want. I'm just excited. I want to get to the answer.
So yeah, there's a lot there, but okay. For us, how do we set it up? What do we look at to kind of help determine?
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm still in the midst of doing that, truthfully.
Okay.
We just started going kind of full in on these transfers roughly 2 months, June and July. Yeah. Prior to that, I'd never really transferred much. The only cars that we ever transferred prior to June were Highline CPO cars. So if our Chevy store took in a Highline BMW that could be certified, then we have to transfer that. That's our company policy.
Yeah.
Therefore, that sales manager has to reach out to the BMW sales manager. They appraise the car together, make a decision on the ACV. When it comes in, we transfer it immediately to that store. It's just the last couple months here, June, July, that we have made the decision to start, kind of utilizing this tool, enterprise transfer tool in vAuto, to help us kind of determine what makes sense to do this and go ahead and do it.
So do you have a couple of examples of specific vehicles that you've transferred from one store to another, and then the net result versus aging out?
Oh, yeah, I do. I kind of shared this with you a little bit ago, but in June, so for instance, in June, we transferred 26 units that were strategy transfers, we call them. So we have CPO transfers, we have strategy, and then we have our PBA to Decatur. So we really have 3 buckets at this moment.
I like the PBA to Decatur. That sounds like a bus.
PBA to Decatur, man. That's kind of what it is.
Yep.
Well, we've sent them 160 PBAs this year. They've retailed 123 of them so far.
Wow.
In Decatur. So it's an amazing program at $3,000 a car.
37 just sitting there. So it is putting the best vehicle in the best spot for the best possible chance for success. So in June, those 26 vehicles that you transferred using this report, what triggered the transfer? How did you identify these are the vehicles that have to shift?
At that moment, heading into June, we had made the decision as an executive committee to target our older inventory.
Okay.
So that's where it started.
Anything over
45 days.
45 days. Okay.
Yep.
Very good.
Yep. So we transferred 26 of those cars. And then go into July, we transferred 22 in July. In June, our average days to sale on the cars that we had transferred was 33.6. Forward to July, 12 days.
Wow. How'd you get it so skinny in July? What'd you do different in June versus July?
I mean, the guys are selling them.
Yeah,
it's somewhat baffling to me, but we really worked hard at perfecting the process. The tool makes it extremely nice because when you go into the enterprise transfer tool, you hit a button, it immediately transfers the car in the system from the original store to the new store. Prior to that, it's a lot of copy and appraisals. There's a lot of accounting. There's a lot of emails that fly back and forth. It's not a very efficient process. We would have to physically bring the cars from the original store to the new photo booth at the new store, retake the photos. There's just a lot to it. In the tool, when you hit the button now, it does all that for you. Immediately goes into that store. And an email gets.
So do you tell the GM after the fact, or do you tell them as you're doing it? Do you just say, hey, I just took this vehicle because I think it's got a better shot somewhere else?
Yeah, I'm trying. That's something I'm working on, providing good reporting. The last couple months we've done it. I send an email out the prior week and say, this is our list. This is what we're contemplating. Do your best to sell these this week, but if you don't get it done, this is what's going to happen next week.
And so Patrick, he's setting up that transfer in advance so the GM can see it's going to go. So that creates some urgency behind it. Is your report showing, is it showing Trent? Is it saying, hey, this vehicle has a better opportunity at this other location because of X factor? What does the report tell Trent?
Yeah, so in the platform, you can click on a car and say, all right, here's a car that I'm considering transferring. All right. Now there's some filters in the platform, like brand mismatch, right? Like Trent mentioned that about the whole CPO idea, or, hey, I've got a Ford and I have a Ford store, but the Ford's at the Kia store. I mean, those are the low-hanging fruit, right? That we're seeing that guys are able to do some brand mismatching and be pretty effective with that. But as I click on that car, it will show based on the metrics, right? Market day supply, average days of sale. Have you had one of these before in that store? Did it sell? What did you make on that car, etc.? You can click on that car and it will show you what that car would look like in the remaining stores. So that is a insight that you can say, oh, well, and sometimes it might look like, it looks pretty good at a couple of stores. Sometimes it might be, oh my gosh, this is a no-brainer, right? So I think that's where Trent's at today, right? He's just starting to pick up those insights. He's doing the obvious stuff. Hey, let's move some age inventory around, which a lot of guys have done historically. Yeah. And then you start to refine that to say, hey, let me start looking at some additional insights. And once you get the rhythm, you see a lot of success.
How's it getting those insights?
So through our profit time module, we do have, that is AI driven. So we are actually looking at probability of sale of that car at each store. If you have the original provision, platform, then it is multiple insights, right? So we kind of differentiate profit time and provision as provision is the insights everybody's used to, right? Cost of market, price of market, market day supply. We have an algorithm behind, an AI driven algorithm behind profit time, which uses probability of sale, which just sophisticates that a little bit more. So you can kind of choose between the two.
Trent, as you transferred the 26 vehicles in June, 22 vehicles in July, and you used these analytics to make that transfer, did the prediction come true? Like, was it pretty accurate in the opportunity?
So far, and that's what's been amazing. So what I was going to mention is you talked about buy-in a little bit ago. The guys right now at our stores are asking me to start doing this on a weekly basis.
Yeah, you're a rock star now. This is what everybody wants. They want a tool that works really well, that you say it's going to happen, and then it does. That gives you a ton of credibility as an executive leader.
Yes, sir. Yep. And we have done tremendous with it. So average days to sale in July, 12. Average gross on those cars, round $5,500.
Wow.
So all of a sudden you're getting the buy-in because of the results.
And does the selling GM or the selling manager or the selling store, do they get some sort of, there's not profit share, but they just don't take a loss on that unit, right? You're transferring it out at its true cost.
I'm not.
And the selling store gets it. Oh, you're
no,
not.
I'm reappraising that car.
Okay.
Before I make a decision on what store I'm going to put it at too. So we use the analytics that Patrick was talking about, and then I actually appraise the car in the potential store that it's going to. And then they will take a little bit of a wholesale loss if necessary. But
so that's the urgency.
It is. The goal is, though, if we can transfer them sooner and get them to the right stores, the cost of market is way lower when it first comes in inventory, right? So we're trying to engineer it a bit better.
So that works where you have centralized decision-making on used cars, but also works where you have fragmented, because you could still have an operations guy in a group like ours say, hey, I'm going to make this prediction. If you take this Cadillac and you move it from Cadillac over to Benz, it has a better chance to sell at a higher gross at Benz. And then as that happens, you're a hero, right? So, Patrick, how long has this tool existed?
It's literally been out for months. All right. We introduced it shortly after NADA. We were in pilot with some dealers. Trent's been with us for a while, helping us build it out and get it better. Like any tool, add more insights, making the usability better. So it's literally been out for months, which is why when Trent says, hey, for the last 2 months, I'm really digging in beyond, that's where our dealers are today. So this is very fresh, very new. I want to add one thing, Sam, because I got to go on the thread of what Trent said about, the centralized approach, him being the overseer, whatever. As a vAuto PM, I was with a very large, notable dealer group who wanted to do this same thing. Now, this is back 5 years ago. All right, we're gonna move cars around, and the solution was, and I know a lot of stores were doing this. The solution was, let's just have an auction, right? We'll just take the aged inventories and we'll put them in a private store and we'll let everybody bid on them and so on and so forth. And I remember the leader of this group stepping in and saying, "This is not working." And we did what they told us to do, right? He said, basically what's happening is I got guys who don't have cars. They need cars, and they're just buying anything they can, and they're outbidding each other. It didn't have a strategy behind it in terms of they needed the car, or they historically have done well with the car, or, they have a hole in inventory that this would fit perfectly. None of that was in place. So we completely stopped it. And we put a lot of energy into this thing. You're like, boom, it was over in like 30 days. It made so much sense, right? And I kind of learned from that back when we worked that way and said, you know what? Somebody has got to be looking at the bigger picture and making these decisions. And so when you hear Trent saying, "Hey, I transfer them. That's just the way it is. This is how it works." I think that is the better way of managing it, because I've seen it the other way where we have the auctions and we end up truly just kind of kicking the can down the road, and the car ends up in another store and another store and another store, and we finally wholesale it and take a beating, right? So, and I'm not saying there are guys that are successful with that model. I'm not going to say that they haven't been good with that. I just think that this opens up another avenue to look at.
It's a more data-driven way to make decisions that ultimately yield greater profit results. And again, like, I know this, Trent, the more as an executive, as a leader in a company, you give advice, and then that advice is correct, the more credibility you have, and the more ability you have to get things done in the future, whether you have total command control or not, right? So here's my question, Patrick. In a world littered with all these AI tools and technologies, and things are evolving so blasted fast, how does a used car director like Trent, or anybody out there listening to this show, how do you decide, how do you decide what evolutions make most sense to implement and use? And then B, how do you stay on top of this? Like Cox and vAuto have had this for 2 months. Like, if it's something you wanted now, how would you advise people to stay on top of it?
So I define this is my own little lingo here, but I consider what we've built the playground, right? We just want to get dealers to the playground, right? It is a chance for a group to look at all their inventory in one place. Now, dirty little secret, I spent, before I got into a more broader role in vAuto, I worked on the Stockwave product, right? Auction acquisition software, right? Where we aggregate all of the auctions across the country, and we tell dealers, even though we own one of the biggest ones, we tell dealers, go find cars, don't go find auctions. That's the best way to shop. And so we built that tool, and I considered that the playground back in the day, which was, hey, here's all the auction cars, have at it. You got to find what you need, and we have a series of filters to be able to find the right cars. This is really just a duplicate of that playbook, right? Here is the playground. All your cars in the group are there. If someone will look at it with some insights and some filters to be able to rationally look at some inventory that may make sense somewhere else, and someone is monitoring that, I bet that we will come out with a better result. Just like buying a car that you really need, regardless of the auction, you might be able to rip one out of the auction once in a while, which everybody dreams of, right? Yeah. And I think it's the same concept that we've applied here. So how, to your question of, okay, now all this stuff's moving, AI and all that. If we can get dealers to the playground, now we just want to iterate and give them more and more insights on the playground to look at and make decisions from, right? We can build more AI. We can build more decision-making in the playground.
This isn't even an AI question, though, I think, Patrick. This is a question of, we got a lot of vendor partners. There's a lot of people out there with industry knowledge and expertise and best practices. If something is great and works, how can I find out about it fastest. Like people ask me, they're like, hey, you're CEO of a large group. Why do you do this show 3 times a week? Well, I do it because it helps me keep up on the stuff that is the best. And it's fascinating to me. There's constant evolution in our industry. You can't do everything, but you got to find those few things that work and are really good. And then you got to lean into those. And I just think we're in an industry where we're always looking for the sparkly new thing. We're trying to find that, new toy. There's people jump companies, people jump tools on a whim. It sometimes seems, when sometimes the existing tools, if you lean into them more, or if you evolve something together better, you can lean into a partnership and be great. And I think you've shown us an example of this. Trent, you've got a tool that helps you with a problem that's a big problem, which you don't really have because you don't have an aging policy, but you're creating gross without a policy that again, you're a freaking rock star. So then it's kind of like, all right, what else? What other evolutions could you do if you collaborate together rather than just, jump ship to go find the next shiny tool?
Here's my shameless plug for a job that I did that was very near and dear to me when so I worked for an OEM for a number of years, and then I did retail for about 10 years. And then I came to vAuto as a performance manager, right? Out there with a portfolio of clients like Trent, rolling up my sleeves in the software. I've heard Yossi give kudos to his old performance manager before on the show.
Yeah.
And so I think, we have consciously at Cox Automotive and vAuto made an investment to say, we're going to give you someone with the software, right? We're going to give you someone who is hearing across the industry what the best practices are, what's working, what's not working. And it's not always just inventory management, right? They're hearing things about, CRM, innovations and all these different things. And I do think that's helpful for the dealer. And I always tell dealers that, hey, if you're not engaging with that person, you're missing an opportunity, at least just to kind of chat a little bit and say, hey, what are you seeing out there? Just like we're doing on the podcast, like what's working? What's happening in the industry? They can share, a lot of those innovations that are happening out there, and they run across them while they're in some software in a process, trying to help a dealer with a process. And they're just great resources. So I would say that's kind of our secret weapon. Beyond that, I guess you got to, go to the Car Dealership Guy podcast and
take it from there. Right? Plug for us as well. So, yeah, I do believe that's true. You got to surround yourself with the best people in the industry. And that's why the best companies, tech-driven, AI-driven, whatever they are, they've still got to have great people to help plug that back in and provide those valuable insights. So, Trent, as we wrap up, what else keeps you up at night in today's economy? Is there anything else that you're thinking about over the next 6 to 12 months that you're trying to innovate for, or any big problems you're trying to solve as we wrap up today?
I'm just trying to finish strong. We're trying to finish strong.
I love it.
We've got a great year going. July was an amazing month. New and used cars for our company. I live in my own little world, obviously. I've been here for 27 years. But yeah, just focusing every month and every day on getting better. I'm excited about this tool. I think it's huge for us, and I'm excited to, continue to build trust and faith in the tool and what we're doing. And, we're just trying to get better. That's all.
Well, you found a very cool profit center. So Trent Waybright, Vice President, Used Vehicle Operations, Kelley Automotive, Patrick Janes, AVP, Inventory Solutions at vAuto. Appreciate you both being on the show, sharing your best practice, sharing this innovation. And I look forward to learning more about it candidly. So thank you.
Thank you.